This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody to the September 15th, 2020 Town of Harwich Golf Committee meeting. And as prescribed by the governor, protocol-wise, we have to announce that we've suspended certain provisions of the open meeting law, and the governor, as the governor has imposed other strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Harwich Golf Committee will be conducted via remote to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation is available to the public at the town website. No in-person attendance of members of the public are permitted, and every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings of this meeting. We will post on the Town of Harwich website an audio or video recording of said meeting. Invited guest Roman Greer, thank you for attending, Roman, and as well as Ed McManus, I believe, who is not available today. So we'll start with the director's report, and everybody saw that. Roman supplied that in his packet. So Roman, I'll turn it over to you. Roman?
Okay, yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, fine.
All right, here we go. So a lot of the information to be discussed was included in the agenda as items for discussion. So there's not a lot in my director's report, but I will go through items here. Golf Now contract progress. The Golf Now contract is ready to go. That's in our town finance director's hands, setting up a bank account for the fees to go directly into. As you'll see later in the in my items here, we're completely sold out for the month, which is absolutely amazing. So when we look at what we're going to use for Golf Now, we're not missing a thing by not having that up and running at this point, because every tee time in general for the month of September is sold, which is stunning. It just shows how historic golf, the demand for golf continues to be. The Charger Grid bid is, we had some exciting news there, because I know there was a lot of anxiety shown towards that and getting that going immediately. Our town engineer, Griffin Ryder, who's also our procurement agent, at my insistence, contracted an electrical engineer to write the bid specs. So we all had a meeting last Thursday. The gentleman has in his hands all the information required for the electrical load needed for charger batteries, the information from Club Car and Easy Go as far as sample configurations for car barns, and our exact building specs that were from our building bids as well. So he's currently working on putting together that Charger Grid bid package that we hope will go out ASAP. I don't have a date on that yet, but he has been engaged and is working on it with our town engineer. So that's exciting news. The plan is to not wait for the interconnection from Eversource and Green Skies, but to go ahead and work on the Charger Grid package right away.
Well, that's great.
And as I said, the golf course remains booked to capacity, with most September non-member tee times already booked. Again, that's historic. We are dealing with lower staffing levels currently. Just this time of year, our staffing budget goes down. We lose all of our students for the most part. So it's a challenging time of year when the demand for golf does not go down, but the staffing levels go down. So we've had an increased focus on going right back to our, the mandate we're under from the state to operate under the COVID guidelines, and really working on cleaning logs, and that we've got our hands full just with our regular play and on top of those COVID protocols. So that's been our focus lately, is to really make sure we're providing the responsible environment we need to provide. And then, as I said, the non-member play has been very strong. Some good news as far as member play goes. This past weekend, when I wrote this report, only six golfers were on the Overflow list for members on Saturday, and only 8 on Sunday. So Martha, you were on it. Martha was one of the 8, I guess. Twice. Okay. Well, you were one of 8 or one of 6 people, so you're carrying a good amount of points, which means you are playing some golf. So the good news, in midsummer we had 80 people. You know what? I don't even know what the number was. In general, we had 110 requests at a high point for foursomes on a given day in the summer. So the fact that our member requests are going down and down and down maybe gives us some opportunity to see that people are going to get a chance to play some golf here in the fall when the weather is so nice. The Bob Miller request that I forwarded on from the golf committee to the town administrator. I spoke with the town administrator about it. He went through the contract in detail, and the town could choose to demand full payment from Bob Miller according to contract. But that being said, the town administrator is not pursuing that line. He's going to go ahead and recommend to the selectmen that they accept Bob Miller's request and the endorsement of myself and the golf committee. What he's waiting for is, I told him we were having a discussion tonight about the hot stove. He's waiting to do them both together. And so he said, if we come up with an endorsement tonight, if I get that to him this week, and Clem, if you have a unanimous endorsement from the committee, if you get that to me in writing, ASAP, and I can get something together for the selectmen's packet for Monday night, the selectmen will handle, Joe Powers, the town administrator, will present both recommendations to the selectmen next Monday night. And then as a final item, I put a lot of work into this. I put together a monthly financial report. I hope you all found it in the packet. Yes. This is something that took a lot of work to do, but I know there's a lot of questions about our finances, and with all our different funds, things can be kind of difficult to understand where we stand in every regard. So I just said, in the interest of transparency, I figured if I could put together a monthly report and just include this as part of the committee meeting and in part of the public record for our monthly meetings, it might be go a long way towards transparency and towards understanding. So this is the first version of that report, and the only reason I say it's the first version of the report is, as you look at the spreadsheet, it's from the month ending, or for the month of July. We're a month behind right now, and that's just because of the 1/12 budgeting we're currently doing before town meeting occurs. I don't have all of my budget reports don't have their traditional line items with exact spending for each line item, where we stand historically, where we stand, as a percentage of the annual spending for that line item. The budgetary reports are really rudimentary right now because we're working with a budget that has not yet been approved. So that when I put this budget together, I used my most recent monthly report, which was the end of July, and I compared it to last fiscal year's July, just for comparison. But in the future, once the town meeting occurs and our reports get back to usual, for the September meeting, I'll be presenting the end of August numbers, and they won't just have a historical comparison. They'll have the comparison to what the projected amounts are for the year and where we stand in our current budget. As you'll see down the list there, so the top part of that is the general fund revenue and general fund expenses. Right under that is a round count, and because it's July is the first month of the fiscal year. For the general fund stuff, since July is the first month of the fiscal year, the actual for the year to date is the same as the month. But we got a round count with a historical comparison. Under that, we have an annual pass breakdown for sales, and that is for the calendar year. And then on the next, or below that, I have the 3 golf funds. The golf revolving fund, which has a lot more detail in it. That's just the way it's broken down, but that's got an expense line and a revenue line, along with a total fund balance. And then on the right of that are the 2 other funds, the Golf Improvement Fund and the Infrastructure Revitalization Fund. And then below that is where we stand as far as debt goes. And you'll see these are some big numbers here. When all the debt in yellow is old debt that's been refinanced and rehashed. I think the top one is for
Roman, can you?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you bring up that spreadsheet so that we're all looking at it? As opposed to,
It's in your packet.
I know it's
yeah, I
in
don't, I have a hard copy of it only. I don't think I have it accessible on my computer. That should have been emailed to everybody as part of the packet. I'll go through it quickly. You can go back and reference it. But there's that in yellow. That's, if I can pull it off the top of my head, the building of the clubhouse in 2002, the upgrading of the irrigation system in 2006, I believe, and the renovation of the driving range in 2008. So that's all old debt. That's coming off the books very quickly, which is exciting, because if you look at our total debt, this past fiscal year was the highest debt we've had, and it starts dropping off to next to nothing very quickly, because the debt that's listed in light blue is currently being funded by our infrastructure fund. So that debt is not applied against any of our expenses. It's already being taken care of. So we're very quickly, I wouldn't say debt-free because we are paying, but we'll have one debt very shortly, and it'll be, it's already dedicated, it's already funded. So that's the spreadsheet. If anybody has any questions, let me know. I just hope that's something that we, as I provide it monthly, everybody gets used to checking out the numbers and seeing where they stand. And any questions, please let me know.
Okay, we'll move around the table. If there are questions, John, I saw your hand up. I'm going to unmute you. Yeah, John.
My only comment is I'm able to open the attachments and look at them while you're speaking, Roman, while still on the call. So, so it can be done.
John Crook.
Yeah, Roman, I have a question on the yellow, okay?
Yes.
Which is the past debt.
Yes.
Golf course renovations, that applies to what?
So, John, I may not have the exact answers for you. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the top one, golf course renovations. I believe that's the irrigation system upgrade in 2006.
So if I'm reading this correctly, the principal on that was $75,000,
Yes.
and the principal on that in 21 is still $75,000?
That's exactly what it says. Yep.
So the principal doesn't go down at all then?
That's exactly right. So you've got the principal and interest line. In general, John, the way I'd explain it, this is not something that's part of the finances the golf course deals with. This is all, whatever, however it was voted at the town meeting. I think it was just a tax override. So this was built into the tax base. These debts have been refinanced over the years as well. So it's not really anything we deal with other than it's this, we have a lot of questions about our indirect costs. This could be considered indirect cost as indirect debt. It's not a debt we directly pay out of our budget, but these are golf debts. Like I said, the top one, I believe, was the irrigation system. The next one down, it'll say 02, that's the building of the clubhouse, I believe, is the second one. And the third one down is, again, these were refinanced. They say advanced reference was from 05. I think that was the upgrading of the driving range.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess how long will the irrigation debt still keep going? Because you're still showing an interest payment in 2022.
Now I'm looking through my pages here. I'm quite sure that's the final payment on that one, John. Somebody tell me if they're seeing it there, because
I think that's what it.
Roman,
I think
that's the final payment.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, the other one would be going to our current debt, which is the club, the cot bond.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's the one that was put on the books on 6/20/19.
Yes.
So I guess the only thing I'm still confused about is the amount of debt. So that is not the debt for the cot bond. That's our share of the debt in the town in terms of all the debts going out there.
So when you're looking at, if you're looking at the spreadsheet in light blue, John, that says the debt from 6/20/2019, that is the debt for the car barn.
Okay.
So in 2020, the payment was The principal was 72,000 and change, and the interest was 46,000 and change, and then
Right.
that decreases over 20 years.
Okay. For some reason, I thought that was going to be a lot more than that.
No, that's the way we designed it, and that's we. If you'll remember, John, we built in we built the infrastructure revitalization fund just so it would have enough in it to start that first debt payment, because we knew that first debt payment was going to be the highest.
Right. And I thought we had worked out that debt schedule to be about 100,000 a year.
The fund generates about 100,000 a year, so that fund is going to keep generating about 100,000 a year, and we pretty quickly get below 100,000 a year. So that's when we're in FY 24, 25, 26, all of a sudden that infrastructure revitalization fund can start taking on some new projects, can satisfy this debt as well as some other projects.
I think that was, wasn't it, Roman, about, we looked at a 4-year window where we would start to accrue money again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just that I thought the money was going to be a lot more than that, though.
Well, when we first were discussing this, John, it was all theoretical because the town hadn't gone out and addressed the debt yet. So these are the actual numbers.
Yeah.
Then when they actually went out and got the bond.
Now, will those numbers go up at all? Because the project is $1 million too.
So, I don't want to claim I'm very naive on this, John. This isn't really something I deal with. The finance director deals with this debt. I check in with her regularly to say we're satisfying it in full. So we've got
Okay.
the mechanisms to satisfy it in full. We're satisfying it in full. I'm not ever asked to touch these numbers or to
Okay.
apply anything to them. The money from our infrastructure fund is transferred to the debt payments.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the relationship between the debt and then what we had projected to be the cost of the COT bond. That's all. I mean.
Yeah, so this, we are satisfying the debt, and this is estimated at the full 1.2 million.
And that's good news. Jack, you had a question. Yeah, comment?
Yeah. Why is the interest payments, aren't they getting like a 2 or 3% rate on their bonds now? The interest payments seem exceedingly high. $46,000.
I can try to get an answer to you for that. Once again, this is not anything I've ever been asked to comment on, so I agree with what you're saying. I could ask the finance director for an answer on it.
Yeah, it just seems awful high for a 2 or 3% interest rate. Is my opinion.
Good question,
And
Jack.
my other question, Roman, is on your money into the I don't know whether you can see me. I'm looking at the spreadsheet, but you have money going into the infrastructure fund. How is that coming? Where is that coming from? Are we still getting
Greens fees and card fees.
Pardon me?
Greens fees and card fees. $4 on every greens fee and $2 on every card fee, I believe is the breakdown.
Okay, and what about the golf improvement fund?
That's on membership money only. That's $95 per membership, per adult membership.
Right. And that means you've got about you got about 10 members or 11 members in July. Is that the case?
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible this year. Memberships kept coming in July. I'm always surprised they keep coming in July. We even sold some in August. You'd be surprised that our membership rates are so low that if somebody comes to town for a month, say, it may be worth them taking out a membership. So it is funny to me that we sell them that late in the season, but we do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we move on? I don't want to rush everybody, but
Clem, can I mention one thing as we have the spreadsheet in front of us? If you look at the golf improvement fund balance on there, it's $188,000 and change. if you'll remember, the golf has been asked to give $100,000 to cover its previous debt during this financial crisis, and that has not been affected by that bottom line yet. So that when we get into discussing capital, that number is 88,000. It hasn't represented the 100,000 yet.
Thank you, Roman. Steve?
Roman, on the spreadsheet, were you able to get a number or a range from the finance people on what the fully loaded cost of the staff is?
Yeah, so I've got a slide, I think, that'll answer those questions for you later on, Steve, when we discuss, where did I put that? I think I've rates and fees.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's under rates and fees, Roman.
Okay. So I do have a slide that addresses that straight out of the town's FY21 budget.
Yeah, and just a cautionary, we're under the gun as far as the length of the meeting's concerned. So, bear with me. I'm going to try to, get through the agenda because it's fairly ambitious. If we could move on, I'd like to move to new business. And then if there are any other companion questions, they might come up later. Roman, thanks for that report. In the consent agenda, we'd be approving the minutes of the August meeting, but Mike Surgeon, had to archive the video, and as yet he did not present those to me, so I'll waive that till the October meeting. Under new business, the first item is the vision statement, and I sent you some materials, for your perusal, and basically, I think you realize that it's, vitally important that we have both a mission statement and the creation of a vision statement. I thought might be appropriate, especially looking at the next 5 years. I don't expect to accomplish that at this meeting. I'll be looking for some input from you. I kind of challenged everybody to, I guess as a point of departure, to look at our mission statement, which, and I'm quoting, is to provide an enjoyable golfing experience for Harwich residents and non-resident guests that includes a well-conditioned championship golf course with appropriate amenities at a fair, reasonable price that makes Cranberry Valley an attractive destination, an asset to the town and the local economy as one of the premier municipal golf courses on Cape Cod and southeastern Massachusetts. That mission statement was created, several years ago. The advice in most businesses, since we are a business, is to constantly be looking back at that and to match up the sentiments of the mission statement with a vision statement. And I don't know if you had time to look at this on your own, but I thought you might find it kind of interesting, and I won't belabor the point, but I found some examples that kind of drive home the point. And these are well-known companies I'm sure you're familiar with. And I'm going to reference Tesla, Warby Parker, Patagonia, and Amazon. And the first one is Tesla's vision statement. I guess it's a pun of sorts, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. As far as Warby Parker's concerned, and they're in the eyewear business, to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious businesses. For Patagonia, to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And finally, Amazon, to be Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything that they might want to buy online. So, as I see it, we have a twofold task, and it might require the input of perhaps a committee group that would like to look at this in depth so that we can speed it up and bring their conclusions maybe to the next meeting, which will be in October. And that is defining or redefining the mission statement, and also coming up with perhaps an ABC as far as a vision statement's concerned. So I'll put it to the committee. Would you like to take that kind of direction, to have a smaller group within our committee, come up with perhaps an approach? I'm interested in your thoughts. Anyone? Okay, Steve Bellata.
I think that's a great idea, and we should definitely relook at it. I think we should first and foremost talk about general principles of strategy. I mean, do we want to be a member-centric course? Do we want to be more public-oriented? The relationship between us and the surrounding towns. If we can reach agreement on some of those strategies, it'll make writing a mission statement that much more precise.
Well, as I said, we have a mission statement in place, and the point is, do you want to morph it? Do you want to amend it, et cetera? So that'll be the task at hand. John Crook, John, you would have thought?
I thought we were going to talk about some of the vision statements today, but I mean, I can wait if you want to.
No,
I mean,
I'm open.
a small task force is not bad either in terms of coming back with some suggestions for the next meeting.
Okay,
However
fine.
you want to handle it.
I don't want to disservice anybody. Perhaps you have some specific thoughts, because that's the way I advertised it. Are there any thoughts as far as a vision statement is concerned in alignment with the existing mission statement?
Well, I mean, do I still have my mic on?
Yeah. Yes.
I assumed since we developed the mission statement, in looking at the mission statement, to me, it's pretty straight on in terms of what Cranberry Valley is. In terms of the vision points that would coincide with that mission statement, I put a couple things down just for discussion if you want.
Right.
One was to continuously make investments and improvements to the golf course, defining it as one of the premier municipal golf courses in Southeast Mass. And this I mean by irrigation, tree removal, cart path, tee reconstruction, da-da-da-da-da. Another one would be to develop junior golf at Cranberry Valley, attracting new players to the game and solidifying our future, which would include both membership and financial, in the financial base that we're dealing with. Another possibility would be to responsibly increase the golf improvement funds and infrastructure funds so improvements to the golf course can be accomplished over time. Capital improvements, we're going to talk about that today. I have another one, which would be to develop programs for senior golfers who love the game but cannot play 9 or 18 holes now. How do we come up with a program to address the senior golfers? Because obviously we do have an aging population.
Okay.
And then the other one I have is finances. And I think we responsibly have to raise revenue intact or commensurate with the expenses to maintain our general fund contribution to the town of Harwich. So, I mean, those are the 4 or 5 points that I had that would be a vision.
Sure. Thank you. John Wheeler.
When I look at a vision statement, I look at it as a target that provides a vivid description of what Cranberry Valley is 5 years hence. And the more vivid it becomes, the easier it is to see that target. Now we're sitting what I call that the future state. We're currently in the current state, okay, which is all the things we talk about each month. And what our plan is, we need to come up with a means to get from where we are today to hit that target 5 years hence. Now, the things about financial sustainability, customer engagement, I do think that they are, as you say, in your elements to achieve it, to help us to move from where we are today to where we want to be in 5 years. So I'm in favor of defining a target. It says if we were there now, what would the world look like if we looked around? And that to me is the target that we should be defining as vividly as we can to say we all see it now. We know where we are today. How are we going to get from where we are today to hit that target? We don't have to hit the bullseye, but if we hit the target, at least that's close enough for now.
Okay. John, thank you. Okay, then regarding the topic, let's look forward to our next meeting in October. And I see this as an ongoing process. There's no immediacy here that we have to do this, within a week or 10 days or 2 weeks. It'll give us time for thought. And pursuant to what John Wheeler just said, if you want to author or, come up with an idea for a vision statement, that'd be terrific. And we can review those collectively at the next meeting. John Wheeler.
Just to follow on, I tend to look at the development of vision statements, the ones I've worked on, as being developing a series of descriptors, vivid descriptors, that we then cobble together into a statement which defines, that target. So as opposed to coming up with a long statement, descriptors that we can then cobble together. I also would encourage us to get a subcommittee together to work on this, because I think that us trying to work on this at 7 people is going to be a very time-consuming process and an elongated process.
Exactly, and that's why I think I just volunteered you, John, to lead up that initiative. How does that sound?
I'm not sure I'm going to lead it up, but I will certainly be a contributor toward that process and actively engaged in that process. Okay,
great. And I don't want to discourage anybody, but John's point is well taken. With 7 people, and we're somewhat in a kind of a time constraint of sorts. I think a smaller group can achieve an objective for the whole group. So I appreciate your interest. In any event, the next item is the TTime allocation. Jack Conley asked me to have Roman look into this. And Roman, I suppose you can take the lead on that. The Chelsea system presents a number of challenges, as we all know. It's impacted play and allocation at TTime, certainly in a negative way this year, as we found out, because of the tremendous number of members in or around Harwich trying to access the system. So Roman, I would appreciate your insights. And here again is another area where I think common sense says to me anyway that we might have a smaller group, look at some of the nuances of the system, and perhaps as we go forward, especially for next year, provide some recommendations. We can't rebuild a system that has worked fairly well up to this point. So Roman, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, Clem. So I didn't get any specific requests. So I did contribute slides with a few general facts on them. But just in general, what I would say is, Chelsea, I review this thing every day, whether I'm working or not working. I review the lottery system and the TTime allocation. The one thing with the system, it is very fair. So in my director's report, one thing I didn't get to mention at the end of that was another National Golf Foundation article that discusses the historic situation of golf demand right now. And what it says, the latest article says, I encourage everybody to read it. It's part of this presentation, is things are going to go back to normal. I mean, it basically said things are at historic levels right now, but that's because there's no competition for golf. So many recreational activities and places people would spend recreational money are limited, so golf is really the only game in town, or one of the only games in town. And the article basically says golf has not changed. Don't expect there to be a change when things go back to normal. They expect the same number of golfers back. They expect normalcy. So when we look forward to things, this system has been tweaked over the years and is really fair. I think there's definitely some tweaks we can always do to it, but under all the pressure it's been under and all the criticism people have had with the lack of tea times they've received, the one thing that's happened is they're receiving them in fair order, I do believe. And but I do have some recommendations to discuss, and I'd like to hear some thoughts as well from the committee. Let me go through a little data I have, and then I'll offer my thoughts on the system. So this is basically, I know you guys saw this when we discussed tea time intervals. This basically shows, once again, how many member tea times there are per day on the weekdays, how many there are on weekends, what the distribution is. I think we're pretty clear on that. This is a snapshot, and I took 2 different snapshots of who's playing Cranberry Valley on both a weekday and a weekend. And bear with me while I move my screen around because I can't see the second column. Okay, so this was for yesterday. And so the one thing that you have to do on this one is it considers a category called non-members as member tea times, and that's that very top one, because just a quirk of the system, it has to consider a captain in each group, a membership type. So if you take that 11 under member count and add it to the guest count, you get the true guest number for the day. So yesterday, 56 guests played Cranberry Valley, and 172 minus 11 would be 161 members played. So that's how that allocation occurred. And you can see the differentiation between Harwich, Chatham, non-resident members, juniors. That's a pretty good weekday snapshot there. And then on the next page, I've got a weekend snapshot. This was for this past Saturday, and you can see the numbers are a lot higher because the distribution is 60-40 member to non-member. There's more non-member play, but you still get a good idea of the different membership categories that are playing golf at Cranberry Valley on any given day. And you may say these are out of season. They're not. This is, I mean, this may not be, you know, the kids may have gone back to school, or some of the families may have traveled home. This is an in-season tee sheet where we're still full to capacity every day. And then bear with me. Okay, so these are awful small numbers here, but just for data, I mean, I know people like data. This shows what the most requested tee times are of the day, and go ahead, take a guess. It's 7 a.m. is the most requested tee time all day long. Those 7 and 8 a.m. tee times are the most requested. They all fall within that early morning member block, and I think, you know, a few years ago when we had that packed golf committee meeting where everybody was so opinionated about going away from the every other tee time is member, non-member, and going to block tee times, the block tee time system has really worked well. So, you know, we have that member-only golf course in the morning, whether it's for 2.5 to 3 hours based on the day of the week. It's really a good asset, I think, to fill the golf course with members first off. But and the members are pretty savvy about knowing where these blocks are. We try to get them information throughout the year, but this time of year with the sun up and sundown differences, we've gone from 6 o'clock first tee time to 6:30 first tee time to this past Sunday at 7 o'clock first tee time. So that always affects the member blocks and the non-member blocks a little bit. So it gets a little confusing there, but go to the next slide. And this is how the end of the day looks. So in general, that's just some random snapshots of the Chelsea system. I'll tell you for the non-members here and those that maybe don't know it that well, in general, the tee sheet has always been very black and white. If you play golf before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a point. If you play golf after 2, there's no points assigned. That's that distribution number I inherited when I started here, and you can see where it generated. It basically is to spread out the wear, because 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. are the 2 most requested tee times of the day. It's to give some incentive to play later in the day so that everybody doesn't want to play at 7 and 8 and there's no requests later in the day. And so everybody just gets further and further away from what they requested. It's an incentive to say, well, you know, I want to stay a high priority for Saturday, so let me play during the week at 2 or 3 o'clock so I don't accumulate any priority points. I see Martha wanting to ask a question.
Roman, I just have a few observations, and
Yeah.
I probably weren't aware of all these things, and now that I've gotten so much feedback from everybody, I'm a little bit more on top of it. And I think people are upset about 0 points after 2 p.m. I think they're upset about 0 points for 9 holes. I think they're extremely concerned. I know everything is black and white, but you get a member who sets up a tee time with 2, 3 guests, and that member only gets 1 point. It just doesn't seem fair, because there are men who or women that play 9 holes every day. They get no points, and then they put in for 18 holes and they get it because they don't have any points. And I think this whole thing with members taking up member times for 3 guests, I think they should go into the non-member slot. And that there should be a sliding rule. If you have 1 member with 3 guests, then that member pays the green fees. If you have 2 members.
That is the case, Martha. That is the case. So the rules for members bringing guests are 1 member, and this is, again, we didn't change anything this year. This is the way it's always been, and this year, as is in every regard, a lot of pressure has been put on every previous decision or previous policy. The policy is a member can make a request to bring 1 guest in a member tee time. That's all. So there's no 3 guests being brought in a member tee time. 1 member can only invite 1 guest for a member tee time. If they want to bring more guests, they are directed and have to play in a non-member tee time. And I agree with you about the points for 9 holes. Like I said, it's the points after 2. It's never been an issue in the past because, like I said, I think it made a lot of sense to spread out the wear on the tee sheet. This year with so much demand, it may make sense, and if we anticipate a lot of demand next year, it may make sense to say, you know, tee times before 2 o'clock get a point, but tee times after 2 get half a point, and that may still spread the wear a little bit, but still make that person a lower priority than somebody that didn't play. That may make sense. We do have system limitations where I know a lot of people have always mentioned to me that if you play the early morning back 9 because you're only playing 9 holes, you should only receive half a point. The system doesn't allow that. It doesn't recognize if we say tee times before 2 o'clock get a point, it recognizes everything before 2 gets a point, so we can't assign half a point for just those morning 9 holes. So if you played the back 9 in the morning, it's a full point, just as if you played the entire 18. So that's really the only rule is currently, and what has been in the past since I've been here, is 1 point before 2, no points after 2, and the one qualifier there is if you put in a request, say for 8 o'clock, and you receive 10 o'clock, you get 1/10 of a point taken off for every hour away from the time you requested. So you get 0.8 points in that situation. But no, I totally agree. When looking back at this season where it's been so different, if we do anticipate this kind of demand or an increased demand next year, I think that those are all good points that you bring up, Martha, and others have brought up, that maybe we should consider a half a point for times after 2 o'clock, twilight a quarter of a point. I don't even know. I mean, I'm just throwing the numbers out there, but I think your point is if somebody played today at twilight and you didn't play, you should be a higher priority than them for tomorrow. And I think that's true because if you play, there should be some value to playing that should go against your priority over somebody that didn't play. So that is a good point.
So,
go
Roman,
ahead.
I just one other question in regard to one of the first things you talked about was all the tee times taken for September in the non-member times. What are they charged on for those times?
So, well, I didn't hear you that well. What are they charged for greens fees? Is that what you said?
In September. You said that all the times are filled till the end of September.
Yeah.
What are they charged for those green fees?
What are the fees being charged? It's just whatever the appropriate charge is on our rate and fee schedule. So we're still in high season for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's a full $74, just as if it was midsummer. Weekdays, I think we're still at $74 across the board. So we're still at our highest rate, I believe. Until Columbus Day, it takes until Columbus Day that it drops. So we're still charging full boat, full bore season rates.
So there's no discounts on golf now?
No, absolutely no discounts at all right now.
Okay.
Jack, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Roman, do you have a feel for, I mean, you mentioned 8 and 9 over the past couple of days, but do you have a feel for, say, in August, how many people are on email overflow? That just seems extremely low based on the comments or the feedback that I get that only 8 and 9 people are in overflow.
Yeah, so absolutely, Jack. The reason that I highlighted the 6 people on this past Saturday and 8 people on this past Sunday is it was more like 40 and 50 for most of the summer. I mean, for most of the summer, there were more like 40 or 50. And I see your name on there all the time, Jack. So I know
Yeah.
you know about it. Yeah, and I think in general, when we look at the overflow list, it considers requests. You know, in general, requests are either twosomes or foursomes. That's just how people are putting them in. So it's not an exact number that get accommodated each day. But in general, the T-sheet accommodates 40 requests, and then that's kind of a cutoff number. If you're in the top 40 priority, you'll get placed, just as long as you offered some flexibility in your placement request. And if you're above 40, chances are you didn't get one. And I think we topped out this season at 110 requests one day. So, you know, the top 40 get placed, and 4th of July weekend, I think we had 110 requests. But in general, we were getting about 40 people or so on overflow. It would, I think, be a high season average.
Okay. I have another question. You mentioned that you said, I think it was a possible solution on the 2 o'clock issue, just giving those people a half a point. Then I thought earlier you said you can't assign a half a point to a person.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Jack, I probably wasn't clear on that. The system will not allow us to give it the parameters to say before 2 o'clock, all tee times receive a point, and then to go ahead and say early morning back 9 should only be half a point. As I was discussing early morning back 9, it can't differentiate between the first tee and the 10th tee when we're distributing points. So the morning points are all have to be 1 point, or they have to be uniform. Once we get to different windows of the day, we can change it whatever we want. We could say 6 to 10 is a certain amount of points, 10 to 12 is a certain amount of points. It just doesn't differentiate between 18-hole rounds and 9-hole rounds.
Okay, and one last thing is, are you non-members?
Jack, I lost you. Can you say it again?
Repeat that, Jack.
Do you charge non-members when they make the time, or do you let them cancel, or they only pay when they get here?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of Golf Now is they're going to pay as soon as they book. But we have a good system currently where we don't charge them when they book, but we do take a credit card hold. We require a credit card hold, and we have very few cancellations. As you can see, there are very few tee times get turned over. So we have a detailed cancellation policy. There's cancellation fees attached to that. So our tee times are pretty well guaranteed, and they show up. They show up or communicate with us based on the cancellation policy.
Okay, and just is members canceling at the last moment an issue?
I'm sorry, again, you cut out a little bit, Jack. Did you ask me, is member cancellation an issue?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, I think, as we look at things going into next year, I think one frustration has been members that make tee times and don't show up for them or cancel last minute. And so, I am probably going to recommend for next year that we go back to a penal situation on that, where if you no-show, there's a penalty assessed. We've never done it, and one of the reasons we haven't done it is we normally have things that we haven't been able to have this year, which is members sitting on the wall hoping to get into a group. It always kind of naturally happened that threesome foursome's on the books, but only 3 people show up. Well, then we can fit in that member that's waiting on the wall for a group. This year, everybody has to have a tea time. There's no walk-ons are allowed. So that is on my recommendation list to discuss for next year, Jack. It is a penalty for member no-shows because it is a problem. And if you received my email to the membership last week, we're dealing with a little manipulation by members of the T-sheet where members are using that situation where they're allowed to bring 1 guest. And so they're submitting for, a guest, say, and I'll say, John Wheeler and Jack Conley each put in with a guest. So that's a foursome, Jack Conley and a guest, John Wheeler and a guest. And then they show up and say, shoot, our guest couldn't make it, but we have Steve Blott and Martha Duffy in their place. So that's been a manipulation we've been dealing with. And I had to send an email to the membership saying, if you submit a tea time with a guest, you're responsible for the guest fee, whether you slide Martha into the foursome or not. She's still got to pay the guest fee because you circumvented the system and the priority-based nature of it. So we're always dealing with people poking holes in our system. It is pretty foolproof, but that's one that's a shot we have to send across their members' bows every so often in the summer to say, don't submit for a guest. And then they'll even play a game where they'll say, they'll call and cancel and immediately have their friend on the phone to say, hey, did any member of Tea Time open up? And so we're constantly monitoring manipulation of the T-sheet. And it's minor if it ever happens and we shut the door when it does. But to go back to the original point about members bringing guests, one of the reasons our revenue is so high this year in greens fees when we offered less guest play is because members are bringing so many guests. And I think it's a disservice to the members to a degree because say, on that last slide where I said on a weekend there's 144 member tea times. Well, if every member brought a guest, there'd be half that. There'd be 72 member tea times with 72 guests. So that door is open if every tea time was a member guest. And I think a decision to close that down would really cause a problem for the members because I know the members really value bringing guests out and they like it that they have that opportunity to do it. But it doesn't guarantee, one of the reasons in the summer when we had so much demand that I really supported and went to bat to have our leagues reinstated is those league blocks are guaranteed all 4 members in every spot. And so when we have sweeps or ladies 18 to 9, although that's a guaranteed block where it's all members, so we get to satisfy a lot of members. But going forward, I think that should maybe be looked at, that there's a limitation to bringing guests in member tea times. It would have a financial impact, but it protects more member tea times. So that is one of the things I wanted to look at.
Roman, excuse me, everybody. I have to interject here. John, I'll entertain a short comment from you, but I want to cut off the discussion. Obviously, this is a complicated issue. Jack Conley, since you brought this up to my attention, I'd ask you respectfully if you were willing to do it to dialogue with Roman in the next month, and perhaps Roman come up with a preview of some of those recommendations that you might make, at our next meeting in October. So, John, if you would, John Wheeler.
Okay, just a quick question for Roman. Roman, back to the points issue. Is the potential for assignment of various points before 2 a.m., is that currently a capability of Chelsea, or will we require a software upgrade to enable one to make decisions about 0.5 before 7 o'clock for 9 holes or whatever?
We have the capability to make changes like that. Where we're currently limited, like I said, is the differentiation between a 9-hole round and an 18-hole round. That's a limitation, but we can choose which member category gets how many points at different times of the day. So I do think it's a good idea to review it. If we do review it and have any changes, I would really document them well and let's notify the membership well, because people are, the frustration that you understand people have right now, I could understand great frustration also if we changed it too drastically, because it takes a lot. It's a complicated system, and our members know it very well. I know I have a friend that's uses the Chelsea system in Yarmouth, and I asked him how many points he has because he couldn't get a tee time, and he said 275. So they use a different point value there. They don't base everything off one. They base them off 10s and 50s and different numbers. So yes, we do have the ability to assign different values for different times a day.
Thank you, Roman.
Jack, I kind of left you out there hanging. Are you amenable to that idea? Jack? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I couldn't, my thing was muted, sorry.
I can't get you unmuted, Jack. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Go ahead. Steve?
Just a quick question. Does time of entry into a request play any role in who gets assigned, Roman? In
No,
other words,
so
if somebody goes in at 6:01 versus somebody else at 6:17, does that increase probability of getting a tee time in the
no,
Chelsea?
it does not, Steve. So basically, the Chelsea system is open between 10 and 4 days before you want to play, and it just accumulates. So it just accumulates all the requests between 10 and 4 days out of the day of play, and the morning 3 days before play, it looks at all the tee times requested based on how many average points each group has and assigns them in order. Of the Steve Bellata group has no points, so they're the first one. What did they request? Bam, they get it. Then it goes down the list based on average points per request. There's no priority to putting it in. If you put it in 10 days before the day you wanted to play or 4 days before the day you wanted to play, the placement will occur at right around midnight, 3 days before play, and it doesn't matter when that request came in.
And is there any way that we can take a look at data to see if any members seem to be getting a higher percentage of requests fulfilled versus other members in terms of the percentage of requests that they've put in to be filled?
That's not a report I've seen. I'm not really sure. So that would be looking to see if the checking to see if the system is working correctly.
Roman, that's something that you and Jack can engage in, and if anybody else has input that they want to direct toward Jack Conley, that certainly would be appropriate. Our major challenge in this meeting, as you well know, is perhaps getting to a point where we can, make suggestions or at least direct attention toward our rates and fees for next year. We're on the clock in a sense with our meeting in October coming up, and those recommendations have to come from the director of golf, and then we have to engage in a public hearing. So I'd like to go to item number 3, the USGA document review, and I've asked everybody to look at that, and I'm going to go right around the table, and you can give me your top 3 or top 5 bullet points when it comes to the USGA recommendations, because this spills over into our capital plan priorities, which is the next item on the agenda. And that, of course, spills into the financial review of focus on rates and fees. So it's the order that I have in the window. I'm going to go Jack Conley, and then John, and then Martha, and then Paul, Steve, and finally John Wheeler. And of course, Roman, from your perspective as director, I'm sure you had some conclusions yourself. So Jack Conley.
Yeah, I apologize, Clem. I didn't get a chance to look at that in any detail, so I really don't have anything.
Okay, John Crook. John Crook.
My takeaways from the report were, number one, we still have a thatch problem, particularly in the greens. And also we have thatch in the tees. And in addition to aeration, I think we have to do a lot of top dressing, which we have not done this year based on the COVID impact. The other thing that came out strongly in the report was the irrigation, and I think that was predicated on having a lot of bad spots in the fairways. And some heads are more effective than other heads. And I think it just goes to prove how much we need the wireless heads in our capital plan. And then the other point that came out to me was the equipment needs. And I think there were three important equipment needs that were pointed out during the course of the day. Number one was to have a spreader for top dressing, a circular spreader, which we need drastically. Also to have a deep time aeration machine. And the other one was to have a new sprayer for fungicides. So those are my three takeaways.
Thank you, John. Martha? Martha? Thank
My
you.
next,
Yeah.
my first one was the irrigation system. I think that's the cause of a lot of our fairway problems that we're having right now, which is really in need of improvement and taking care of our greens.
Okay. Anything else, Martha?
No, thank you.
Okay. Paul White?
You need to unmute him, Ron.
I tried to, Jack. There you go.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yeah.
I started to say this is my first experience with anything like this. I thought generally it was very well done in the sense that everyone had an opportunity to listen to the discussion as it went along. I thought Sean, our superintendent, was very open and straightforward and candid, not only with Mr. Jacobs, but also with us, sharing the challenges of running a course like this that is as busy as it is. I think my takeaways were, we're in pretty good shape generally. And as John Crook has mentioned, there are several recommendations. All of them seem quite reasonable to me. One concern I had was, yes, the irrigation is definitely critical, and it was discussed in great detail. And unless I misread it, as I looked at our capital plan, it didn't appear to me that it was going to be happening soon enough. So that's a concern that I would raise. If in fact we are going to move forward with irrigation sooner than I understand from the sheets that were shared with us, I think that's great. If it's not, then I think we have to think about some remediation sooner rather than later.
That's, Paul, I think that's a great point. I absorbed that point as well. In the projection of the capital plan, we've got to ask ourselves, should we engage in a more robust or, a more focused way to get it done sooner? Or, is it practical? So that's something we'll have to address. Steve, coming to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the irrigation is the key, and I would second Paul's thoughts that we should try to do that as soon as it can feasibly be done, and the same on the equipment and the thatch issues that John mentioned. I agree wholeheartedly with those. So I think overall it was a pretty good report. We've got some good ideas, and I think we just need to keep moving forward aggressively.
Thank you. And John Wheeler.
I agree that with most of the people on the call that the number one is the irrigation. If I heard it once, I heard it a dozen times. Okay, what's wrong with these fairways? And so I explain as best I can. But so I think the irrigation heads and the wireless, I run on with John Crook and all the others on that one. I also think that the tree issue, because I've been through enough of these things that we've got the densely forested area that we're working in. And that's going to increasingly cause shade in areas that we don't want it, which is going to increase disease on fairways as well as on greens. So I think we need to continue with that. with trees. The other thing I would say is if we can find a creative way to acquire a stump grinder, I'm all in. And so I hope that the town will continue to pursue that, or Cranberry Valley will continue to pursue any and all creative means to be able to acquire this thing so we can get rid of what's left from that tornado. So those are my three.
Absolutely. Thank you. Important points. Roman, to you.
Yeah, thanks, Clem. I was very happy with the job Paul did. I enjoyed meeting with him, and I'm impressed at how well he grasps the golf course and its needs in just his first visit, because we had Jim Skrowski coming out year after year, and it seems like we have not missed a beat with Paul. He did a great job. And then I being the last one, I can just echo a lot of thoughts. I know on a day-to-day basis, a year-to-year basis, thatch is our biggest turf situation that we're dealing with. So the light sand top dressing and then the spreader that Paul recommended, absolutely a high priority. The stump grinder and the other various equipment you mentioned, high priority, absolutely. And the irrigation system is a high priority. We'll get into the capital plan, but you know, we're in fiscal year 21 right now. Fiscal year 22 is when we planned on starting that that project. So that would be this fall. We'd be going to capital outlay to sell that project. So I mean, I think that project is in our next fiscal year beginning. So I know that discussion's coming, but and the selective tree removal is huge. But I think day to day, when I talk to Sean and year in and year out, thatch is our #1 problem. We're going to address that with deep tine aeration and light sand top dressing every 14 days, which will, as Sean mentioned, we did not get a chance to do this year. But if we got a light sand top dresser to help, and we close the back 9 every Wednesday morning like we currently do in season, to go out there and do it every 14 days, that'll be huge. So I echo everybody's points.
Okay, Roman, thank you very much. People, that takes us to item number 4, the capital plan priorities. So within your packet, Roman had supplied us with a slide that details, priorities proposed by year, FY21 and extending, through FY26. So I'll take the same method of procedure here. I'll start with Jack Conley. Jack, looking at capital requests, how would you prioritize, let's say, the top 3?
Well, one of the big concerns, Clem, is it looks like a lot of the capital requests are coming out of the Golf Improvement Fund, and that's going down to $88,000 with this, based on what Roman said earlier, of contributing $100,000 to offset the town's financial situation. So, I think I would just start, or I would focus on the irrigation stuff. As an initial, that's $75,000 for 3 years in a row.
Right.
I would move that up, and that's going to consume most of the $88,000 we have in that fund.
Okay. Thank you. John Crook. John?
I lost my sheet. Oh, here it is. I think the biggest need is the wireless heads on irrigation. The one thing that I need some more information on is why we are doing it 8 consecutive years. I think it's in the plan for phase 1 of 8 in terms of irrigation heads. So, to me, the urgency in irrigation heads is we've got to do it a lot faster than that. And I know we've allocated $75,000 each year, and I believe that money is coming from the Golf Improvement Fund. So I think the decision that we have to make, is it a Golf Improvement Fund project or is it a capital project? And I think it destroys the whole purpose of doing wireless heads if we're going to spread that project out over 8 years. It doesn't make sense to me. Either you do it or you don't do it. And I think that's the whole thing. If you're going to go wireless heads, there's so much efficiency in going to wireless heads. If you have 1/8 of the golf course with wireless heads and 7/8 of the golf course in that first year in the old system, it doesn't make sense to me. It makes sense to do it as fast as we can.
Thank you. Okay, Martha. Martha Duffy?
I totally agree with what John said, and that is my recommendation, as I spoke to you today also about it, that we need to consolidate those years to get it done because it's affecting the whole golf course. And you're
Okay,
gonna lose.
Thanks, Martha. Okay, Paul? Paul White?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It might be helpful. I agree with the prior two comments with regard to moving up the sense of urgency on the wireless heads. What does the $75,000 get each year? I mean, does that cover a certain number of holes or a certain number of linear feet? I mean, I don't know what it represents because I haven't been in this discussion before. Can anyone enlighten me on that? And if not,
I can help with that, Paul. I can help with that. So when we had this priced out last year or the year before, I can't remember which one, when we put it on the capital plan, it was based on what they consider a leg of the irrigation system. And a leg is basically on average 2 holes of irrigation. So that was 75,000 approximately for 2 legs of irrigation. I'm sorry, per leg, which is about 2 holes, or based on the linear feet of the hole. And I'll wait till my turn to get into detail on this. But the one issue that we face with doing it more than that, the reason we chunked it out this way is that's all we have for available funds. I mean, unless we're asking the town taxpayers to fund this, that's what our funds can absorb right now, and that's what our funds have accumulated. We're going into next year asking for this project with $88,000 in the bank for it. But I'll wait my turn to go further into that.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Steve?
Then trying to see what we can do, if anything, to speed up the irrigation heads and wiring, even if it means delaying some other things like the cart path and some of the tree work. One question I would have in terms of setting priorities is in FY21, we've got the design and feasibility of the 3-hole practice and putting course. If we delay that, if we don't do that, are we going to put our status as an up-and-coming first tee location at risk?
Yeah, that's something for Roman to address. Steve, it's a good question. Thank you.
Because if it does put it at risk, I think that should be a pretty high priority. I think that's a pretty prestigious and worthwhile venture for us to try to get is to the first tee program. I would hate to see something that puts that in jeopardy.
Absolutely. Okay, John Wheeler? John?
I just want to echo the points about the irrigation heads, and if we're limited to, if we can find some creative way to come up with some other funds to speed up that process, I'm all in. If we can't, we can't. That's just the limits of the reality of what we're dealing with. I almost liken this to the people who wash windows in these big high rises. The project never ends. They move from one side to the next, and then when they finish, they start the first side again. And I almost feel like we're in that game when it comes to irrigation heads. And maybe that's the game we got to play. I don't like it, but I also recognize Steve's thinking about the first tee. But to me, if the main golf course is not in the kind of shape that we expect it to be and our members expect it to be in, the main golf course, then the other stuff sort of falls secondary to it, in my view.
Just to give you insight, everyone, because I've been in this long enough to react to it. The last time, John, we were faced with an irrigation issue. They put it off, did it piecemeal. It ended up, in the end, costing twice what it should have cost if they had done it in an appropriate, and timely manner. But, that was almost 15 years ago. So, maybe it doesn't relate to today, but it's kind of a common sense, I think, insight. So, Roman, your last word on this, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So I agree with the comments that I think the irrigation system is the priority. Clem, you've been with me in the capital outlay meetings. Golf pays for golf. I mean, if we don't have the funding source for it, it's not getting done. There's no, we're not going to the taxpayers to ask them to give us an irrigation head. So yeah, I think that if we want to prioritize that and expedite that project, we're talking about raising rates and fees to generate more money in that fund. Because like I said, we're going into the capital outlay meetings this fall with $88,000 in the bank to ask for a $75,000 project. I don't see how we could expedite it without raising fees and generating more money in that fund, I think is the only thing we're looking at. As far as the first tee came to Cranberry Valley without any expectation of a putting course or a short course or anything like that. So they're here regardless, and our golf course is so good. I think, any success of a first tee program is going to revolve around what we give them for access to our facilities. So we don't need to necessarily build that stuff right away. They're going to be here regardless. I do think that we need to in order to do the first tee right, allocate some afternoon tee times to them. We've got the big course, so we don't need to necessarily build them something while we have something. If they're going to do after school programming, which is their plan this fall and into the spring, I'm sorry, not this fall, they postponed this fall, but in the spring, let's allocate them some afternoon tee times to give them some golf course access. That's where they'll learn golf and that's where they'll thrive. Other than that, the one thing that I would say is we currently do tree work out of our budget. So we have a budgeted line item of $10,000 in our budget every year for tree work. So that's a minimal amount that we can always use money from our capital outlay number. Just so you guys know that aren't that in tune with our budget, every year we've had $73,000 in capital outlay as part of our budget. And when you look at this spreadsheet right here, anything that you see that says budget attached to it, that's coming out of that $73,000 capital outlay line item. We purposely do not spend that to the number because there's some dedicated uses of that fund, which is the intermunicipal agreement with Brewster and Dennis for irrigation. I'm sorry, for aeration. And this is the fund that's really our flexibility, where when our pumps go down, this is the fund that we pay out of, where we don't have to go to the town meeting, have an emergency town meeting to bail us out. So that $68,000 going forward in capital outlay is available to us, and that's why we put in some cart path stuff, because that's appropriate under that line item. I'm personally, I've taken the back range net and the range net replace out because I don't think they're high priorities for what we're looking at. The maintenance truck that's in there for FY23 is a must. We have one heavy duty vehicle on our fleet currently, and that vehicle is also part of the highway department's plow fleet, and that's we had to put $16,000 into it just to keep the body on the engine this year. So that's a must that we replace that truck. The Mark Mundrum T project that's further down, our golf course would be such a better golf course if we did that. I mean, I don't know if you've recently read the Mark Mundrum T project. It takes Cranberry Valley to the next level. It's a $300,000 project. It's not a high priority to me. I think a higher priority is the irrigation system and the equipment that the USGA recommended currently. So I do think that stuff should all be in our future, the design and feasibility of the 3-hole and putting course, the Mundrum T project, but I personally prioritize the irrigation system. And when we get to rates and fees, let's talk, if you want to expedite it, let's talk about raising rates and fees to expedite it.
Okay. John Wheeler and then John Crook, and then we'll move on to the financial review. John Wheeler?
Based on what Roman just said, okay, I'm going to hold my comment because I know we're about ready to embark on rates and fees. And I'm going to want to know, okay, what could we do with rates and fees, and how big an increase would it require for us to accelerate this so we get 2/8 or get a quarter of it done in the first year? No, I'll leave it at that.
And, John, John Wheeler, I'd like to chip in on those comments because, Roman, another aspect of this analysis that I think is important is, do we approach arbitrarily 2 legs at a time? Or, I mean, it kind of says to me, if we have failed irrigation heads right now, this year, wouldn't it be incumbent to look at where the system is presently failing and at least put a Band-Aid on the areas, John, that have failed and we know are failing, and then, incorporate some kind of a approach to expand, as you said, a more aggressive posture toward completing the system. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
Okay. Roman, what's your thought about that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Clem. The one thing I would say is let's not overreact to the hottest, humidest summer we've had. I know we have some turf thinning on the fairways. I wouldn't overreact to that. We have some inefficiencies in our heads. That doesn't mean it's going to stop working. I mean, the system is going to keep running, and we'll have some spots that when it does get hot and humid, we may lose. Again, this was a perfect storm this year Sean Fernandez told me this was the most challenging weather season he's dealt with in his entire year time at Cranberry Valley. On top of that, he had a lot of his spring procedures cut short because we weren't allowed to go to work. So this was a perfect storm. What you're seeing out there is I'm very proud of the product, and I'm very proud of the work that our team has done under these circumstances. But I wouldn't overreact to an August that was we were designated a severe drought area, and we had heat and humidity that really blasted us, and there's not going to be a situation where we don't lose turf in a summer like that, regardless of what our irrigation system looks like. I mean, I think our customers have to realize that there's going to be some turf loss. We had a group of our pro shop staff go out and play Wiano yesterday, and that of course does 11,000 rounds a year. We did 9,000 in a month, and they had turf thinning and turf loss in their fairways. That's the kind of August we had.
Yeah. Okay. Jack, a brief comment, and then John Crook, and then I'd like to move on to that review. John Crook? John?
Yeah, I still have one comment on the wireless heads. I think before we overreact to this, I think we have to do another financial analysis in terms of what the wireless heads cost. The only reason I bring that up is if we were to allocate $75,000 for 8 years, we're talking what, $600,000 for wireless heads. I know of 2 courses in the last 3 years that have put entire irrigation systems in, and this is the pipes on every hole, the whole bit, and not just the T-square, it's going out to the rough as well. And the total cost of an irrigation system is anywhere from 1.0 to $1.2 million. And when you have ledge, it might go up to 1.4. So then I take a look at what we're allocating for spending here for heads, because our irrigation system in itself is okay from what I understand. We just completed that in terms of the pipes.
Yeah, that's
We have PCV piping. So I'm just saying $600,000 for heads, to me on the surface, and I'm not an expert by any means, but it seems like a lot of money.
John,
Yeah, John, I agree with your comments, John. That was not a formal estimate. So we did speak with a couple different irrigation companies and projected out the costs. That was not a formal estimate that we ran with there. So I think as we start getting further into this, we need to have a more formal estimate.
Right.
Jack Conley, quickly.
No, I'm fine, Clem.
What's that?
I'm fine. The heads, go forward with the heads.
Could you repeat that, Jack?
I just agree. I think we should go forward with replacing the heads as quickly as possible. I just think that's the most important aspect of what we've been talking about.
Okay. Final word, John Crook.
Final word?
Yeah.
I think what we have to determine, we've got two things here, I think. Number one, we have to come up with a capital plan. And then number two, I think we have to come up with priorities for each one of our golf improvement budget in our infrastructure fund. Now, obviously, the infrastructure fund is kind of taken care of with a cot bond. I mean, any fees that we have associated with the infrastructure fund is going to be spent for the next, I don't know, 7 to 10 years probably.
Right.
But I think we have to prioritize what our capital projects are and what our golf improvement projects are, and we have to separate those.
So I'd like to move on to number 5. It's just about 5:30, and you know, because
But I
this is
just have one other question, Clem.
yeah.
And this probably goes to Roman, if I can address it to Roman. I think at the last meeting, you said the next priority that we have is really finalizing our 7-year capital plan. And I'd like to know, today we've talked a lot about a lot of things, but we haven't finalized anything. But what is the date that we should, as a committee, agree with you in terms of what the final list should be for the capital projects, as well as our golf improvement budgets?
Yeah, thanks, John, because this is something the town is embarking on, is a firm, set in stone, hard to change 7-year plan. As you and I just traded emails about, what's considered a capital project is anything over $50,000. So really, all we're talking about, other than the 1 year the truck is in there for over $50,000 projects here, I believe, is the irrigation system. So you know, the priorities, that priority list that we have, the spreadsheet that's all colorful with the different columns for the different funds we have, I think internally as a committee and as an operation, we should constantly, we have the ability to move things around on that, as long as they're not $50,000 items like the irrigation system and the truck. Those, Clem and I are going to have to go before the capital outlay committee this year and put on a 7-year plan. So I appreciate everybody's feedback today, and I think we should work towards getting a formal appraisal of what it'll cost for the irrigation heads, get something really formal to work with, and put that, you know, really, when we address rates and fees and see how much money we have to put towards it, put those things in stone where we're putting them, and those are, and if there's any other over $50,000 items, they need to be set in stone with what year they're on in the town's capital plan. Everything else on that colorful spreadsheet that has our capital outlay projects, such as, you know, cart pass each year and things like that, the range net replace, whatever, we have flexibility with that if it's under $50,000. So that's really what we're looking to do, is let's nail down a plan for the irrigation system that we're talking about. And I think we need to leave the truck in there where it is, because what I've been told by the town's highway department, that can't move. That's needed by that date. So if we put those on there and we can find a way to fund them, that's what we need to go forward with on a 7-year plan.
Okay, and you know, John, I would, or Roman, for the whole committee's sake, I would suggest, you know, that perhaps we can set as a goal voting on that at our October meeting. If you can present that refined list of items for capital, you know, for the capital plan. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Clem. I think that I'll have to look at, I'll work with Sean to engage a company to give us a formal number for the irrigation system. I think that's critical. That may cost us some money. I'm not sure how, you know, what it's going to take, because when we first tried to get those numbers, they were difficult to get. It was hard to get a company to give us an appraisal of that amount when they knew the work wasn't coming right away. So we'll tackle that one.
Yeah, I got
But
you.
yes, I do agree. I'll come back in October with a more formal capital plan.
John Crook, John.
You know, if we're going to make a complete list too of things that we should be at least exploring, I'm not saying that we can do them, but a couple things that we talked about today were the stump grinder. A thing that we have talked about in the past is a generator for the Cranberry Valley operation. The thing that we talk about every year, it seems, is what's the long-term feasibility of our pump house? I mean, is that in good shape, or should we start thinking about that in terms of breakdowns? Because an irrigation system is only as good as your pump house. And then we had those 3 other pieces of equipment that the USGA recommended. So, I mean, if we're going to make a complete list and then prioritize, that's what we should be doing. But I mean, at least we should put on a piece of paper the things that we need for Cranberry Valley to be a good operation. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I got you, John. If I can, I'll put that all on paper, because if we had time for a more in-depth discussion, I had 12 items that I wanted to put in different columns on that priorities list that included the stump grinder, the spinner top dresser, and we've got ways that we're getting creative looking into stuff. We're going to look at buying the stump grinder, going in thirds on it with the other courses as part of our intermunicipal agreement. We can purchase that spinner top dresser for $27,000 if we choose to, out of our capital outlay line item in our budget. Then there's other stuff with the pro shop, with upgrading our phone system. The generator didn't seem to be a high priority item when I really looked into it with Sean, because the question, even though it'd be great to have, looking at $250,000, the one thing Sean made to me is, over his entire time at the golf course, we would have never used it. I mean, it hasn't really been needed anything that large, $250,000 system. So I will put all the items I have and the items that have been discussed on that priority sheet for discussion next month, if you want to do that, Clem.
Thank you. Okay. So let's move into the review of rates and fees. This is building toward our goal of having information available to the public so that they can react in a public hearing setting. And then historically, as you know, what we do is we adjourn that public hearing, Paul, and then we go into a decision-making meeting on rates and fees. And that would be, coming probably, or most likely, I'll have to check with Mike Surgeon. There's a specific calendar where we have to advertise the meeting, et cetera, well in advance. So my goal would be to have possibly that special meeting the week after our October meeting. And I believe I set the date at October 20th, so it would be the 27th, perhaps, or another date that's available. But, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Roman, take us through rates and fees.
Okay, I'd be happy to. I'll go quickly here. So I'll go through some slides. I know a lot of the slides you guys have seen before where our current rates and fees are. I have a few ideas, and as I get into the finances of the town's budget for next year, I see the need to, not even discussing the capital items we discussed, I see the need to generate $75,000 to $100,000 more in revenue next year based on our increase in salaries and wages over the past few years, and the anticipated increase in a new electric cart lease for next year. So I think if you'll see the numbers, there's going to be a need to generate $75,000 to $100,000 just in general fund revenue for next year, not even counting capital projects. So let me run you through some numbers here, and then I have a few ideas.
Okay.
All right, so this is our rate and fee sheet. I don't think anybody needs to dig too close into that. That's existing. This is a history of our rates and fees. In general, if you want to keep in mind, like I said, my general feeling is, this was an outlier of a year. We had a plan to go up every other year in membership rates, whether it's $25 or $20 or so. I think we stick with that. So we just went up in Harwich resident fees last year. I wouldn't think it'd be a good idea to go up into this year if we didn't need to. I think we should stick with the every other year plan, because what we've been doing for the past few years is every other year do memberships, and then the years between do greens fees and cart fees. That's just what we've done in the past. We can do whatever we'd like. And then this is again a spreadsheet I've had a couple months in a row here where we currently stand with membership. You've seen this spreadsheet as well. This is the revenue spreadsheet. If you can, just take a look at the bottom line for FY19, which was the last normal year we've had, $1.874 million revenue. And then, so if you look at this sheet here, I know FY20 is again an outlier because we were put on spending restrictions based on the COVID crisis. Our salary and wage numbers were going up quite significantly. We have not added positions. We have not added hours. It's strictly contractual and the raise in minimum wage. So I think we need to cover that. I mean, I think that it's important that we cover those those increases in salary and wage, and they are projected to be higher. I mean, we've actually tightened the belt each year, and these are actual numbers. They're budgeted for FY19, 20, and 21 to be over $900,000 in salary and wage. So that I think we need to generate $50,000 to $65,000 to cover the increase in salary and wages over the past few years. And then this was what I was referring to with Steve, as far as our fully loaded number goes. This may not be exactly the way you wanted to see it, but what you'll see in the top grouping of numbers is the total operating source of funding. So that's our appropriated budget each year is what it is for FY21, $1.671 million. And then when they include, all the employee benefits, the number ends up 2.3 at the bottom. The bold, and this is straight off this is no insider's sheet here. This is straight off the finance department's website, FY21 budget, which is a public document. It's been discussed in the selectmen's meetings all year. The bold print says employee benefits and debt service costs are not included in the department's appropriation and are allocated in this spreadsheet for informational purposes only. I have spoken with our finance director, and she will give me a statement when we go into our rates and fee recommendation of what she thinks it's appropriate for us to cover of those costs. And in casual conversations in the past, if you take out the county retirement number of 198, about basically $200,000 to pay for employee retirement, the health insurance, Medicare, life insurance, those are all appropriate for us to cover. So I think when she does give the statement, and I don't want to speak for her, I'll have a firm statement from her when I make my rates and fee recommendation. We're expected to cover our 1.671 in addition to the health insurance, Medicare, and life insurance numbers. So we're around two. I think we need to chase a number around $2 million.
Right.
I'll get the exact number, but I think that's what we need to generate in revenue, not counting what we need to generate for capital projects. And then just to complete the circle here, just so you see where this goes, this is not that interesting, but this is the entire town's fiscal year budget. I just wanted to show how it was separated out. The golf has the third highest budget of all departments, but no department pays those other employee costs. They're all in the town budget on a whole separate line. They're not applied to any department's budget that's not an enterprise fund. So that's how the town views employee benefits, post-employment costs. But we will be asked to cover some of those costs, and like I said, I'll get a specific statement. As far as recommendations for next year, in order to generate that kind of revenue, I don't have any specific plans at this point, but I do think a greens fee and cart fee increase is definitely on the table. We're in that every other year for increases in greens fees and cart fees. When we discussed the 10-minute tea time intervals, I presented, we're now selling premium tea times. And the public, as I said, with every tea time we have booked through September, the public is responding as if we are offering a premium experience. I think it's appropriate to raise those rates significantly, I would say. And I mean, when I say significantly, I'm not talking $20, I'm talking between $5 and $10. I think it's pretty significant. We can raise greens fees more than we have in the past. And we're currently a $74 rack rate, possibly $80. I mean, maybe we go into next year, our top rate is $80 for a greens fee. Cart fees, I think we need to increase them at least $1 or $2, because the new cart lease, as I'm anticipating, is going to be about $25,000 more than we're currently paying on a cart lease. We're getting such a deal on these old carts. So the current cart rate we're paying is in revenue share is 84%, I believe, off the top of my head. I think we're going to be paying more of a 70% share for a new fleet. So I think when I crunch the numbers, that equals around $25,000 in difference. I think it's time to raise range buckets and range membership. The fact that our members pay $3 for a small bucket, I'll have comparative data to show nobody in the world of golf is paying $3 for a small bucket of balls. It's $5 and more everywhere you go. So I think it's time to raise range buckets and range membership. Big topic that I'm sure everybody wants to dig into until the late hours of the night is Chatham memberships. I'll leave that one for discussion, but there are ways we can generate revenue and limit the amount of pressure on the member tee times by doing away with the Chatham membership. I know that the selectmen will be very opinionated about that, so I would not suggest that we come up with a plan where we say Chatham residents are now gone and they're paying non-resident rates, and so we're going to generate $100,000 that way. Because when this goes to the selectmen, they'll be opinionated. Our town has a regional school district and the wastewater items, and it's been a sensitive subject in the past. So the Chatham rates, that's open for discussion. I do think, if I can tell you the history here, when we look at the young adult and collegiate membership categories, and these are kind of small numbers, but when we used to charge the same, when I say used to, I'm talking about last year, the same amount of money for a Harwich resident as a Chatham resident, they were all just considered in our computer system residents because it was the same rate. When we created our young adult category 3 years ago or so, it just encompassed Chatham young adults as well. I think we can go back and look at the Chatham young adults and say, maybe there should not be a special deal for Chatham young adults and they should just be considered Chatham residents, however we treat Chatham residents. Same with Chatham collegiate. The one that I would hang on to there is Chatham juniors. I think we should keep them in the fold just because the Monomoy School District, they go to school right next to us. They're part of our first tee program, which is Monomoy Middle School. If they can play in the first tee program at Cranberry Valley, we want them to be members, would be my take. So I would protect the Chatham and anybody in the school district's junior membership. But other than that, I think Chatham young adult, that they're on the table for review. I don't know if we should be giving that a special deal or collegiate. And then, like I said earlier, I know we're talking about raising a lot of money, but I don't think it's a year that we should increase Harwich rates just because we've been doing that every other year. But that's just general statements. I have nothing specific until next month.
Okay, I'd like to approach this as we have done so far tonight, and I'm going to go around the table, and it's just because of the order of the participants. Jack Conley first.
I guess I wonder why we even have any distinctions between Chatham, Easton, and Orleans. Why don't we just have a non-resident rate? There's no, I guess there's no, I understand the sensitivity that the selectmen may have, but there's no reciprocation on Chatham's part for any of their rates that they charge Harwich residents. If you want a shellfish license, you pay the non-resident shellfish license. There's, and maybe you do it in 1 or 2 years, but I don't think we want to differentiate. I don't know any other golf course that differentiates by town. They're all resident and non-resident rates.
Okay. John Crook. John?
Yeah, I had a question, Roman, on the Cranberry Valley rates sheet that you had up there, where 2020, the last column, not that one, that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
2020 proposed, but is actually 2020 actual?
Yeah, that is, John. I'm sorry, I did not update that spreadsheet. That's actual.
Okay. Now, the other comment that I heard too was that we should be aiming for, a target that we should be having is like 2 million in revenue. But immediately, I think we want to your point, we want to cover approximately $60,000 or $70,000 in salary and wages, right?
Yes.
To do that, though, we have to do that in terms of membership fees, whether it be Harwich or outsiders or non-residents or junior golfers, correct?
Or greens fees, yes.
Or greens fees, right.
Well, great.
And the other question I had was capital assessment fee. Is that the golf improvement budget?
Yes, it is.
Why don't we ever call it the golf improvement budget? I'm just curious.
Good point. You know, these are all taken from spreadsheets from the town accountant's office, and they confusingly call some of our accounts different things than what we call them. That's what they call that fee that goes into our golf improvement fund.
Okay. And the other thing is the infrastructure fund. We have $20 down there.
Where are you looking?
I thought the
yes.
infrastructure fund was a fee that we put on greens fees and cot fees.
That's true. So, you know what? That's true, John. I may have misspoke. So, we raised the rates in 2018 for members. I'm sorry, I did misspeak at the beginning of this meeting. I said members are paying $95 a year towards the golf improvement fund. They're not. They're paying $75 per year towards golf improvement funds. 20 per of their money goes to the infrastructure fund. The rest of the infrastructure fund is $4 on every greens fee and $2 on every cart fee. But I forgot that $20 increase in 2018 was to the golf infrastructure fund to make that number $100,000 a year.
So the golf improvement budget is $75 for a member.
Yeah.
And the $20 goes towards the infrastructure fund.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I need
You're
that
welcome.
clarification.
We got to move right along. I want to be able to take everybody's input as possible. This will be our last item of business. I'm sorry. What I'll try to do is communicate under old business, maybe informationally. Roman, you and I can get together and address those final issues. But you know, we won't be able to get involved in a vote. So Martha, go ahead quickly.
Well, number one, I would be very disappointed if we did not include non-resident membership fees to mean non-resident of Harwich. That means everybody. I mean, captains, they charge $1,600 for non-resident. So here we charge $1,100 for adult non-resident. And then we go to $835 for Chatham and $910 for Orleans and Eastham. I think it should be one category. And I think, Roman, I think if you could review the other whether it's collegiate memberships, I presume collegiate membership means Harwich collegiate memberships. Does it mean Chatham also?
So we have been representing the Chatham members within that, and that's my recommendation next year is to look at that and collegiate and young adults from Chatham to look at maybe not offering them the special deal.
Yeah, I mean, all right, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Paul White. Paul. God. Okay, Paul, sorry.
I'm saying I'm in agreement with the comments expressed by the other members. We can move along.
Okay. Steve Bellata. Steve.
Okay, I have a couple of points or whatever, or thoughts. Junior rates, I'm fine with the junior rates, but maybe drop the age down to 25. I think by 25, you're established and working and out of school and doing your thing. Chatham rates, I agree with the general consensus of getting them to a non-resident rate, maybe not all at once. Maybe we do it over a 2, 3, 4 year time span, so it's not quite as much of a shock to people to go from the current rates to a total out of town rate. I think that every other idea on changing rates for Harwich residents was a good strategy. But I think with the fact that we had both the tornado and the corona impact revenue in the same fiscal year, I think going up 10 or 15 bucks on the Harwich residents is appropriate because we had unnatural acts that we couldn't control that drove us to that. And I think we can explain that to our members to try to come up with some of the additional revenue that Roman talked about. And then just one last point on the benefits cost. Roman, thank you very much for getting that information. I have never heard of the benefits cost being 48% of salaries. In my 50 years in business, that seems like an astronomical number, and it's hard for me to believe that that's the average in the town. I'm not buying it, but be that as it may.
Okay, John Wheeler?
My understanding that the reason why we went to parity with Chatham was when we had declining memberships and we wanted to try and boost that up. So we said if we offer an attractive rate to Chatham, then we can boost our memberships up. That issue is no longer there because we have 1,100 members at this club. I think that I agree also with the notion of we're not getting the bi-directional benefits that we really, in due respect, should be getting from the town of Chatham, and we're not getting it. Next point. I went to both dentists and captains today, and I looked at the difference between the resident and non-resident rates. For dentists, the difference between resident and non-resident rate is just under $400. At captains, it's $700. That is humongous. Why would anybody want to join captains as a non-resident when they could come to Cranberry Valley? I'm not saying it's not a great course, okay, but still, from a financial standpoint, if I took and I raised, for example, the rate for Chatham residents by $400, if I did that, I would generate, based upon the current numbers I'm looking at, about a little over $81,000 of revenue, additional revenue to the town. If 50% of the Chatham residents left because of that, we'd still end up with $40,000 worth of revenues. I believe that is something that we should be seriously considering. I understand the overlay with all this regional stuff, but we're not getting bi-directional agreements and benefits from Chatham to do that. And if we have to buy this concept over a 2-year period, a 3-year period, let's do that, but let's move in that direction, please.
Okay. I believe our time, I just got notification, our time is about to expire. So, I appreciate everybody's input. I'm glad we tailored it and put the spotlight on this financial review. And I apologize for not being able to, deal with all this. I guess our meeting is being concluded or interrupted. So, thank you for your comment. I'll get rolling.
Right clap.
What next?
Oh.
And, John Crook has expressed this, these Zoom meetings are wonderful up to a point, but I can't wait to get back in person. And I'm going to be talking to the town administrator about that.
I make a motion, Clem.
What's that?
I make a motion that our next meeting is not a virtual or remote meeting. We meet in person. If we have to bring a chair and meet in the parking lot, it's going to be better.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree.
Who cares about whether or not it's being televised? I mean, let's talk face to face.
Well, the sunshine laws prevail, so we don't have a lot of flexibility. So
Why do the selectmen?
I'm going to end the meeting. People, thank
Why do the
you.
selectmen meet?
And we'll pursue that at our next meeting.
Yeah.